Well, Arsenal managed to survive what could have been a very scary moment, Shaka. And we're going to talk to you about it
Hmm.
first. In their match against Brentford, they got the 2-1 win, which takes them top of the Premier League table, at least for tonight, because I'm sure that this was a match that Liverpool and Manchester City were watching very, very closely. But it's the Gunners that get to go to bed happy tonight, Shaka, and more so relieved, especially a certain Aaron Ramsdale. There was a lot of things that Arsenal did well in the outfield positions, but let's talk about the goalkeeper because obviously we know Aaron
Hmm.
Ramsdale came in. David Raya could not play against his parent club, which is Brentford. Huge decision and more eyes and pressure on Ramsdale, knowing that he's not Mikel Arteta's first choice. And Shaka, an absolute howler, a Shaka-strophic moment that really could have almost underlined, I suppose, the fact that Mikel Arteta would happily stick with Raya going forward, but he made up for it.
Yeah, and that kind of highlights the fragility of the goalkeeper position. And while Ramsdale made three really incredible saves, and I thought, bar the mistake, anticipated a lot of Brentford's play and played well off his line. He'll be remembered for that mistake. Um, and I do feel for Aaron Ramsdale because I continue to believe that he's an outstanding goalkeeper. I can quite easily make the argument that he's the better of the two between himself and David Raya. Raya, of
Yeah.
course, preferred by Mikel Arteta. That being said, Ramsdale's last league outing for Arsenal was against Brentford in a game
Hmm.
that again he looked particularly nervy. Did keep a clean sheet, but I don't think he did his cause any good on the day. Today, similarly, as I mentioned, though he equipped himself largely well for most of the game, often as a keeper you're remembered for your mistakes, and that was a glaring one from Aaron Ramsdale.
What is it? I suppose I guess the psychological aspect of it, because I'm sure he senses the pressure, the extra
Yeah.
eyes on it. You could see it. He did come up and did some pretty good saves, especially what could have been an absolute another howler if Ivan Tony had gotten that lob over him. But still, a lot of people say that he probably should just keep it simple. That he's
Yeah.
just not keeping it simple and go back to the basic form of goalkeeping. No one would know that better than you, Shaka. So do you think that's the way to go?
Look, first of all, I thought the save from Ivan Toney was an incredible one, and
Yeah.
and and as much as I'm the commentary on the feed I'm listening to kind of referred to it as a howler, I think that was more kind of because of the earlier mistake. When you're playing for Arsenal, this version of Arsenal, the goalkeeper, as you see with David Raya, has to hold this very high line, very close to the back
Hmm.
four. And at times it might feel unnaturally so, but that's what Aaron Ramsey, that's what Arteta asks his goalkeepers to do. That's what Aaron Ramsey is doing, and it's just an incredible strike from Ivan Toney. Now
Yeah.
it produces a really good save from Aaron Ramsdale, but again, the phrasing that it was almost a howler, I don't subscribe to. I just thought it was an outstanding save, and leave it at that. That being said, to your question, Alexis, it's difficult for Ramsdale. Listen, he's found himself in a really difficult position psychologically.
Yes.
I didn't think Arsenal needed another goalkeeper at the end of last season. You saw the article that he did in Athletic
Hmm.
pre-season talking about his personal issues towards the back end of last season. Then all of a sudden, here he is, having played his way into Gareth Southgate's reckoning for the England squad. He finds himself very much on the outside at club level looking in. There are the Euros that are coming this summer. He's not played. Gareth Southgate, I don't see how he picks him, given the fact that he's not been playing for Arsenal. And then the couple of occasions that he has been chosen, he's determined to make some kind of a showing, not necessarily to impress Mikel Arteta, but more around Gareth Southgate and the England squad, and whatever his next move may be. Because a year is a long time in football, and Aaron Ramsdale has been out of the headlines, out of a starting lineup for just about a year now.
And just final one before we move on to Ramsdale and talk about the goals, of course, that Arsenal did score. In terms of the debate that's going on, because like you said, we know that Raya is still Mikel Arteta's first choice. Arsenal's still very much in a title race. I'm sure he's going to want to be contributing more, especially if Arsenal does this game leave him in that debate going forward, do you think?
Wait. There's leave who exactly? I missed that part.
Aaron
Leave
Ramsdale.
who? And well, yeah. I listen. Again, he's on the outside looking in, and bar an injury to David Raya, I don't think Mikel Arteta changes who is his starting goalkeeper will be for the remaining of this season. Um, and he's totally entitled to that. That, of course, as I mentioned, leaves Ramsdale in a really awkward position, but such is the nature of the game.
Such is the nature of the game, indeed. Well, let's talk about the good that Arsenal did do. They had a lot of shots and probably would have wanted more goals with those shots, but in the end, they did get two very vital goals. One starting with Declan Rice, an absolutely stunning header. I think West Ham fans, Shaka, will be watching that one and being like, "Oh, if only we could have held on to him." But Rice already looking like he could be at least in the talk of signing of the season, just overall for any club in the Premier League.
Without question for me. Last week we were having a discussion uh, around who may be the best of the players this season, and in all honesty, I think Declan Rice is certainly up there. Um, Pep Guardiola thinks it's Phil Foden, and given his performance last weekend, is
Mm.
hard to it might be difficult to say otherwise on the day. But when you see Declan Rice, and every time I talk about Declan Rice, I have to say this. When Arsenal bid 100 plus, when the bid hit 75, as a former West Ham player, I thought I bite that hand, take that money and run. So
Mm.
and then it goes to 100, and I'm thinking, goodness me, you have won a watch here in selling Declan Rice for that. And then 105 or 106, whatever the final price was, given his performances, is an absolute bargain. I, Declan Rice has been simply outstanding. You look at the goal that he took. He had a left-footed volley at the top of the box, and I thought, from a technique perspective, it was blocked. It was blocked on the way to goal, and I'll talk about Brentford and their efforts in a moment. But
Mm.
I thought I saw a technical side, and you continue to see a technical side of Declan Rice that I just didn't know he had. And as
Yeah.
good as I thought he was this season, every time I see him play, I just think he looks a whole lot better. So the goal was outstanding, and you're right to point that out. But I think so much of Declan Rice's play, even when it isn't rewarded with finding the back of the net, has
Mm.
been absolutely phenomenal. Now that being said, and over recent weeks I've been saying that I think Arsenal are playing the best football in the Premier League right now. And again, I thought you saw that on display again today. Brentford played that part. I thought Brentford were outstanding defensively in the way that they limited space for Arsenal, and more times than not. And this is one of the things I think Arsenal do better than anybody else in the league. When Arsenal are in possession, when Arsenal get into your box, they have five and sometimes six players within the penalty spot and the goal, and still they're able to find spaces in your box. The precision and the quickness of their passing is unlike anybody else in the league, in my opinion. And for Brentford to kind of deny Arsenal, all right, albeit they scored one early on with the header that we just talked about, for as long as they did, I thought it showed a real sense of planning and purpose by
Mm.
Brentford. But then on the 75th minute, Arsenal and their pressure, I just didn't think they could withstand it. And I thought, and we've seen this from Arsenal time and time again, comes to injury time, they somehow always find the back of the net. I think the second goal came before injury time, but it was that pressure was always going to tell. It was always going to tell, and you do feel for Brentford because I feel they're defending for most of this game maybe deserve more. That being said, Arsenal's attacking for much of
Yeah.
this game deserve the 3 points.
Yeah, Arsenal do definitely seem to love a late goal as well. As you said, Declan Rice just unbelievably impressive, even when he's not scoring, but he is actually enjoying his most prolific season in the Premier League. And you know what? So is Kai Havertz, someone who so many people were ready, including some of us
Mhm.
on ESPN FC, were ready to write off after we saw him at Chelsea. And now this is just a complete redemption story as well. We talked about how Rice obviously had a stunning goal, but Kai Havertz coming up trumps exactly when the Gunners needed him.
Yeah, and it shows the value of a manager just having confidence in you, and somehow believing in you through those lean spells. But for me, a lot of Kai Havertz's problems are of his own making, and
Mm.
while you have to praise Kai Havertz for his performances and his consistent performances for some time now, you see, Kai Havertz, in my opinion, should have been sent off for a second yellow card for a dive in the
Hmm.
60th minute.
Hmm.
I thought that was a blatant dive that the referee ignored. Saying that, I thought the referee ignored a couple of a couple of the other shouts. Gabriel had a shot for penalty after the dive that I did not think was a penalty. But there was another incident just before Kai Havertz dive in the 65th that quite easily, and you see it more times than not, be given to home teams. Um, I'm defender pulling I'm trying to remember on Trossard,
Mm.
right in front. Goalkeeper got to the ball first, and maybe that kind of swayed the referee's decision. But that could have been given as a penalty. It wasn't. And then a couple of minutes later, Havertz with this ridiculous dive that easily could have seen him be sent off. I make the point that while Kai Havertz is certainly having a bit of a renaissance in this Arsenal team, and thanks to Arteta showing faith in him. At times, he can shoot himself in the foot. He very easily could have been sent off, and we could be having a totally different discussion about Kai Havertz this evening. That being said, I thought it was a good substitution. Trossard, who had
Yeah.
been largely ineffective for most of the game, Gabriel Jesus coming on for him, and despite that bad decision by Havertz, Arteta stuck with him, and I just felt his physicality, his height, his presence in the box would make a difference, and in the end, it absolutely did.
Right. Well, if we have a look at the Premier League table, you will see just how tight it is at the top. I'm sure a lot of people still would have Liverpool and Manchester City as slight favorites over Arsenal to win, because we do know that Liverpool and City are mentality monsters. And when we talk about Arsenal, that's something that we've talked about
Mm-hmm.
that they've not seemed to have, and how they tend to fold usually this time of the season. But here we are into March, Shaka, and they are still fighting, and they are still getting the job done when they need to, even if only just. Is there enough that you're seeing from Arsenal now to suggest that their mentality has changed and that this may be a different Arsenal from what we're used to?
Absolutely, and without question. As I said, I think Arsenal are playing the best football in the league. But of course, they've not been there. They've not crossed that line first um, to suggest that, yes, they can. We just don't have that body of evidence. But
Yeah.
I'll quote, I love quoting Frank Leboeuf, who always says, you have to hit the post before it goes in. You have to
Mm.
come close. And City finished second before they eventually won their first Premier League title of this era. They lost in a Champions League final before they go ahead and win it. As Liverpool throw away a sizable
Mm.
lead to lose to City, then they go and win the league. Liverpool lose in a Champions League final, then they go and win it. Now you just wonder, given what happened last season, Arsenal hitting the post, this is their time. I feel that experience does them the as bitter a pill as it was to swallow. It
Mm.
was a valuable or invaluable experience for them in terms of this season. And as I said, I while yes, Liverpool and Manchester City have been there and done it, Arsenal right now are playing better football than both of them.